There's a white powder sitting on the bottom shelf of a hardware store right now that costs less than a cup of coffee. Most people walk past it without a second glance. No flashy label. No promises printed in bold red letters. No advanced formula or new technology. Just a plain container that looks almost too simple to matter. But here's what happens when you actually use it. You take a bathtub that hasn't been truly clean in decades, the kind with deep yellow stains baked into the surface, rust rings that formed slowly, drip by drip, over years of neglect, chalky white calcium deposits that have survived every scrub brush, every sponge, every expensive cleaner you've ever tried, the kind of damage most people assume is permanent, the kind that makes you think the only solution is to replace the entire thing. Then you sprinkle a small amount of this powder onto the surface, you add a little warm water, and you walk away. No scrubbing, no force, no effort. 10 minutes later, you come back, and something doesn't make sense anymore. The stains are gone. Not faded, not reduced, not hidden under a layer of artificial shine. Gone. Completely erased, as if they were never there to begin with. The yellow discoloration disappears. The rust rings dissolve. The mineral buildup that resisted years of cleaning simply vanishes. What's left behind is the original surface, smooth, bright, almost identical to the day it was installed. And this is the part most people don't expect. This powder isn't new. It isn't experimental. It wasn't recently discovered or secretly imported or restricted in any way. It has existed, in plain sight, for over a century. It was never banned, never recalled, never made illegal. It didn't fail. It didn't disappear. It was simply ignored, buried beneath shelves filled with brightly colored spray bottles that promise instant results and deliver temporary relief. Covered up by an entire industry built on one simple idea. Your problem should never be solved permanently, because the moment it is, the moment you no longer need to come back and buy again, the entire system breaks. Think about that for a second. If a one-time solution exists, something that costs almost nothing and works better than everything else, why isn't it the first thing you see when you walk into a store? Why is it hidden in a different aisle, with no marketing, no promotion, no explanation? The answer isn't complicated. It's just uncomfortable, because a product that solves the problem once cannot compete with products designed to keep the problem coming back. And once you understand that, you start to see everything differently. But to understand how something this effective could be pushed into the background, you have to go back. Long before modern supermarkets, long before advertising, back to a time when discovery wasn't driven by profit, but by curiosity. The year was 1776. Not in Philadelphia, where history books usually point, but in the quiet university town of Uppsala. Inside a cramped laboratory behind a small apothecary shop, a man named Carl Wilhelm Scheele was working late into the night. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. By day, he was a pharmacy assistant, measuring powders and filling prescriptions for other people's discoveries. By night, he ran his own experiments using borrowed glassware and whatever raw materials he could afford. On that particular evening, he was boiling down a batch of sorrel leaves. Nothing unusual, just another attempt to isolate the hidden compounds inside common plants. As the liquid reduced, something began to form at the bottom of his flask. Small, pale crystals. Subtle, easy to overlook. But Scheele didn't overlook them. He leaned in, studied their structure, and did what chemists of his time often did. He tested them directly. The taste was sharply sour, almost aggressive. But it wasn't the flavor that mattered. It was what those crystals could do. He had just isolated a compound that would later be known as oxalic acid. What Sheely documented next should have changed everything. This compound didn't just interact with organic material, it attacked mineral buildup. It broke down rust. It dissolved the kinds of stains that normally bonded permanently to surfaces. In simple terms, it didn't clean, it erased. He wrote it all down, published his findings, sent his work into the scientific world, and almost nothing happened. There were no headlines, no mass production, no sudden shift in how people cleaned their homes. His work, like much of early chemistry, was buried inside dense academic journals, written in Latin and Swedish, accessible only to a small circle of scholars who had little reason to apply it outside the lab. Scheele continued his research, made several other important discoveries, and then, just a decade later, died at the age of 43, ironically poisoned by the very chemicals he spent his life studying. And with him, this particular discovery faded into obscurity. For over 100 years, the compound remained largely confined to textbooks and laboratories. It existed, it worked, but almost nobody used it. Then, in 1882, something unexpected happened, not in a lab, but in a kitchen. In Indianapolis, a manufacturing chemist named George William Hoffman was preparing a simple meal using rhubarb. After cooking, he noticed something strange. The pot he had used, once darkened by years of mineral buildup and stubborn residue, looked different, cleaner, brighter, almost polished. This wasn't a coincidence. Hoffman recognized it immediately. He isolated the active compound responsible for the effect and confirmed what Scheele had discovered a century earlier. The same chemical, the same reaction, the same almost unnatural ability to remove what shouldn't be removable. But Hoffman did something Scheele never had the chance to do. He turned it into a product, a simple cleaning powder. No gimmicks, no complexity, just the compound, refined and packaged. He began selling it locally, first to taverns and saloons, where brass rails, copper kettles, and iron surfaces needed constant maintenance, and the results spoke for themselves. Word spread, not through advertising, but through experience, from one bar to another, from one city to the next. People didn't need convincing. They just needed to see it once. By the turn of the century, this powder had quietly made its way into hardware stores across the country. No rebranding, no reinvention, because nothing about it needed to change. It already worked. But here's where the story stops being about discovery and starts becoming about something much harder to ignore. Because once you understand what this compound actually does, the entire cleaning aisle begins to look different. When this powder touches a rust stain, something very specific happens at the molecular level. Rust, as it turns out, isn't just dirt. It's a compound, iron oxide, chemically bonded to the surface beneath it. That bond is the reason scrubbing doesn't work. You're not removing the stain, you're fighting a structure that's been locked in place over time. But this is where oxalic acid changes the rules. Instead of pushing the stain around or covering it up, it reacts with the iron oxide directly. The acid releases oxalate ions, which bind aggressively to the iron. That reaction forms a completely new compound, one that is water-soluble. In simple terms, the stain is no longer attached to the surface. It dissolves. It rinses away. It disappears as if it was never there, not cleaned, not reduced, chemically dismantled. And this is fundamentally different from what most people use every week without thinking. Walk into any supermarket and look at the cleaning aisle, you'll see rows of brightly colored bottles, each one promising to remove, lift, or break down stains. But most of these products rely on surfactants, essentially soap molecules designed to loosen surface-level grime. They work on grease, they work on dirt, but mineral deposits, rust, and hard water stains aren't sitting on the surface. They are fused to it. So what happens? You spray, you scrub, it looks cleaner for a while, but the stain is still there, just slightly weakened or temporarily masked. A few days later, it comes back, and when it does, you reach for the same bottle again, and again, and again. Now take a step back and look at the numbers. A single bottle of bathroom cleaner costs anywhere from $8 to $15. The average household buys multiple bottles every year. Over time, that adds up, not just to dozens of purchases, but to hundreds, even thousands of dollars spent managing a problem that never truly goes away. Now compare that to a powder that costs less than $3 and can solve the same problem in a single application. Not manage it. Solve it. So here's the question that most people never stop to ask. If a solution this cheap, this simple, and this effective has existed for over a century, why isn't it the standard? Why isn't it front and center on every shelf? Why are you being trained, week after week, to buy products that require you to come back and buy them again? The answer isn't hidden in chemistry. It's hidden in economics. The global cleaning industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars every year, and that revenue depends on one thing: repeat purchases. Products aren't designed to eliminate your problem permanently. They're designed to keep it under control. Just enough that you feel like they're working, but not enough that you stop needing them. Because the moment your problem disappears for good, so does your reason to come back. A $2 solution that works once generates $2 total. A $12 bottle that needs replacing every few weeks can generate hundreds of dollars from a single customer over time. Multiply that across millions of households, and you don't just have a business. You have an ecosystem built on maintenance, not resolution. And a product that breaks that system, it doesn't need to be banned. It just needs to be invisible. So let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest about this. Before today, had you ever heard of a simple powder that could completely remove rust, mineral buildup, and hard water stains in one application? Or have you, like most people, been stuck in a cycle of buying, scrubbing, and buying again without ever being told there was a different way? Drop your answer in the comments, because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it.